My name's Roland Thompson. I'm the owner of Hares and Hyenas bookshop, which is located in the Victorian Pride Centre. It specialises in LGBTQI titles.
Splendid. That gives me so many questions to ask. So, can I start with the name? And can you explain where that comes from?
The name comes from the Middle Ages. Hares, hyenas, weasels, stoats, and a few other animals were seen as night animals associated with witches and the outsiders. Hyenas were thought to be grave robbers. Hares were thought to have multiple vaginas, and hyenas, because the clitoris is on the outside, it's hard to sex them, so it was thought that they could change sex. So that sort of thing. That concept, around that concept. Yes. Yeah, so it's from it's not from primary source material. It's from a book, Christianity is so goodness gracious, I've said it so many times, and this time I can't say it. Christianity, Social Tolerance and Homosexuality by John Boswell.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And how long has Hares and Hyenas been in existence?
We signed the lease for our commercial road shop on the 1st of December 1991, and we opened on the 23rd of December 1991, 2 days before Christmas, after a whirlwind fit-out. Ironically, the first one took 3 weeks, and the fit-out for the Pride Centre has been going on for about 16 months, and we're still not close to having it sorted out. So I haven't learnt much in 30 years.
So back in 1991, how did you get to the point of opening a bookshop in general, and we'll get to the kind of specific focus in a moment?
Right, well, I'd been working in bookshops for Hartwig's in Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, for about 4 years. We had like a few places had a bay of gay, lesbian, trans books. My then partner was also working at Hartwig's in St Kilda, and they had a little bit larger section. We both knew that there was a lot of titles that couldn't be stocked. International Bookshop in Elizabeth Street had the biggest section of queer titles at the time, and it was just still a couple of bays. We'd been to Sydney to see Bookshop Darlinghurst and had shopped there a number of times, so we knew that the stock was available. Also, Crusader, my ex-partner, he was the book representative for Bulldog Books, which was the main importer of the small queer presses, especially from the US. Alison Cleese, I think, was going at that stage. Only Women Books, Gay Men's Press in the UK. So we had the knowledge, and we knew that it was time to do it in Melbourne. And so we basically worked out the main areas where there were I use the word queer as an umbrella term. So, I mean, there's many meanings for the word term, but for me, it's a convenient term to cover everything from sort of non-straight straights to straight days and everything in between. So yeah, we went around a few different suburbs, in the city suburbs, and realised that Commercial Road was, I would say, at the time, the most vibrant area. It had, they had the Beat Bookshop, which was a gay adult bookshop. It had a number of venues for night trade. So we just kept looking in that small patch there until the one in Commercial Road turned up. And we haven't looked back since, I say confidently.
That's fantastic. When you were starting to put together the idea and looking around for places, I almost hesitate to ask, how did people respond to the idea of a bookshop that was focused on queer content and queer presses and so on? Did you mostly get a good response, she says, crossing her fingers?
Yeah, look, yes. Yeah, I mean, the only strange response was when we were doing the fit out, and because we were between Three Faces or whatever it was called at the time, the Market Hotel, and the one down the road. So there was a lot of evening people walking backwards and forwards in the evening, and a drag queen came in and said to us, "Of course, you're going to be covering up the windows, aren't you?" And we said, "No." And he said, "Well, it won't work if no one will come in if you don't cover up the windows." And I would say that was the only negative observation we had from anyone. It was touch wood. It was complete. Well, it's all past now, so we don't need to. But it was a very positive response from publishers and the real estate agent. I mean, if you're renting properties around Commercial Road and Chapel Street, you've got to be comfortable with that type of thing. A couple of years later, the first Grand Prix that we had in Melbourne coincided around Easter, and there was a big drama because the poster for the gay party at Easter was Our Lady of Guadalupe, and so 3AW and everything were getting on about using the image of Virgin Mary for a gay party. And on the Sunday of the Grand Prix, we had a group of male youths come in, and two of them just walked behind the counter up to the window and ripped all the posters off the window and then left. And it shook us. I mean, it shook us. And at the same time, it happened so quickly that we hardly knew what was happening. But, there's been very few bad responses from any of the locations. I mean, they're all in the city for a start, but at the same time, there's the case today of the inner city pub with the neo-Nazis and stuff. So we've had a good run politically along those lines. So it's sometimes it is people from within the community that we've had more problems with than outside the community. Just the various politics of any minority group where there's clashes within the community. And I've always, right from the beginning, I said we're not going to get involved in any political side. So my idea of a gatekeeper is just leave the gate open. I believe I'm a gatekeeper, but that's only to oil the hinges, not to open and shut it. And so we've tried to always be collecting from both sides in the titles. It has become a little bit murkier now that certain feminist groups are treating the trans community as if, they don't exist, or if they do exist, they're delusional or something. And I refuse to have material that doesn't treat other sections of the community with respect. So that is the line that has had to be drawn recently. Before that, I would try and tiptoe around things and try to present different sides. I mean, in the 90s, pretty well all the books around transgender were from Janice Raymond's Transsexual Empire, which is like a science fiction transgender people are going to ruin the world or something, type thing. And so looking back, I shudder that we stopped those books. But at the time, it was part of a discussion that didn't have, it wasn't, I'm not transgender, so I can't speak how transgender people would feel about it, but I didn't feel like it was weaponized in the same way as those attitudes are these days.
You said you're in the process of a new fit out, because I was reading on your website that, of course, you're moving to a new, have moved, sorry,
well,
yes.
We've moved, yes, last December we moved, but yes, it's all taking its time.
Yeah, so tell me about that move. What prompted you to move into the newish, I guess, Pride Centre?
Well, I mean, a year is still new in that area, but we were approached quite a few years ago by the Pride Centre people when they were in the planning, and I saw it as a good opportunity. Where, yeah, if I could just have a little moment, just to say, my partner and I split up a couple of years ago, so it's difficult to explain the process of what went on. So we decided to split the businesses up, and so I moved to the Pride Centre, and Crusader has kept the Johnston Street space as a venue and secondhand books. The secondhand books section is fantastic. If anyone runs into secondhand books, and it's like a different tribe of people, books buyers, secondhand book buying people, I recommend that they check out the collection at Johnston Street. And we did have, before COVID, our performance and events, I thought, was fantastic. We covered so many different areas, and being a small venue, we would get established stars doing, tryouts of ideas. So Crusaders continuing with that, while I'm just focusing on the bookshop at the Pride Centre. I think it's great in that, even though as a specialist shop, when we're in a suburban space, we get people coming from all over the place, it still is focused within that area. So the Fitzroy, book sales in Fitzroy were very different from South Yarra, but not in the ways you would assume, or a lot of people would jump to the conclusion of. Whereas at the Pride Centre, we get people from all over the place. I mean, the Pride Centre is a space that attracts people, and so these book sales are so varied. It's fantastic. I just love that. 1 minute you can be selling sort of a feminist history, the next minute you can be selling some gay male erotica, and just then a kid's book, and then this. I just love the way that in the Pride Centre it covers. We get customers that are interested in basically any area. I mean, that's a chaotic explanation of why I've gone to the Pride Centre. So yeah.
When you were thinking about the space itself and what you wanted it to look like, what sorts of things have you been considering? Mm-hmm. What do you want it to feel like?
Okay, well, the space is under the stairs, and it's quite an open space. So at the moment, I've got temporary fencing around the outside. The concept that I've got is that it will be, we're using a macrame screen as a security screen. It's been the main stumbling block in that there's surprisingly no building specifications for bondage rope. So the building surveyor has said that the melting point of the bondage rope is too low. I would have thought that it would have to be quite high because people use candles around everything. But it's too low, so we've had to rejig it so that it's not part of the structure and it is part of the decoration. So Luke George, who people might know from his recent installation at the NGV of the footballers being suspended in the Great Hall. He's doing the macrame for that with using pink and turquoise bondage rope, which are the two colours that were dropped from the original Gay Pride flag because there were too many colours and it made the logistics of making them too expensive. So the Pride Centre itself is quite muted, and I like the idea of when you come round the corner to the bookshop, it's in bright colours. It just hopefully it'll just knock you out, and so I think it's going to be a fit out that will be worth waiting for. Every time we have a meeting, and it's so exciting, and then there's a new hurdle that we have to get over. But we've been able to, using all those pandemic words of pivot and cohort and supply chain issues, we're getting there.
Excellent. So you've been in the business for 30 years now. I feel like I should say congratulations. Yep. That's very exciting.
You are yes. I've been 30 for about 35, and then the bookshop's been 30. Yeah, yes. We didn't have a celebration in December last year, but I think, with fingers crossed, with the fit out finished, that we'll have a big celebration this year with the relaunching.
Awesome.
I think so. So why celebrate anniversaries with zeros? Let's start celebrating them with ones on the end.
I'm a big fan of prime numbers, so 31 works for me.
Well, 31's the prime number. Oh, yes, that would be good. Okay.
It feels like almost a silly question because so much has changed in 30 years. But is there something that stands out for you that is one of the biggest changes in the bookselling industry over the last 30 years?
Apart from the obvious of the internet, well, look, perhaps I should say, I think this year, for queer titles, is the most significant year since 1995. In 1995, we had Holding the Man. There was a whole group of, not major authors, but secondary authors, even though they probably hated saying secondary authors, but those ones that just really write really good books but don't get that same visibility. So, and then Christos's first book came out. In America, they started signing up, basically queer activists, because they started publishing more in the non-fiction area. So titles like Transgender Warriors was published around then. Don't quote me on that one. But and I think this year it's been a staggering year for new titles, and they keep coming both locally. If we start with the November of last year with Christos, and then there was Hannah Kent's Devotion, and then this year, this week we've had Marlowe from Ian Carmichael, The Brink from, I always think of William Holden, but it's Holden Shepherd, but I get my Holdens mixed up sometimes. Sarah Hardy published a fantastic book, A Secret Life, self-published, a novel looking at the history from the end of the First World War through to the 60s in both England, and then looks at the well of loneliness and how people bought it in Australia. It's a fantastic year for titles. Patrick Gale has published major publishers, major writers, and then smaller writers. So something like Bad Gays, which I think it was late 90s. There was a book about Hitler saying that he was probably gay. And we got into so much strife from people that said, we shouldn't have that type of book in the shop. You can't have negative portrayals of gay people. Whereas now we've got a book that just is all about bad gays in history, and it's really popular. It's selling really well. So within the queer area, that I would say, well, that's a change, but it's more a development to being such a significant year, and hopefully it will continue next year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In your time as a bookseller, what sorts of things have particularly surprised you?
Oh, what surprised me? I better be very, very tactful. Early on, when we were still a bit nervous about the shop, what surprised me was you can't make assumptions about people, and I still think that's the case. I remember an older woman came in, and she was dressed very conservatively, and I was thinking, a Christian, it's going to cause trouble. And she ended up buying all this bondage stuff and everything. I mean, that things that really surprised me. Just you can't make assumptions about people. I love it. I just think it's fantastic that people have their secret lives, or not so secret, but not obvious lives. So you just don't know what someone's going to bring up to the counter. So I don't know if that's the way that you were heading with the question, but that would be my biggest surprise. Is it's just what some people bring up to buy. As I said, I just love that. It's wonderful.
Fantastic. As we've been talking, Roland, you obviously have so much passion for selling books and for the specifics at Hares and Hyenas. What is it that has kept you going for 30 years?
Well, I would say those surprises every day. You're never completely sure what's going to happen. You never know what new books are around the corner. As I was saying, when we first started, an area like transgender studies was very dodgy area of what was available. And now there's just so much fantastic stuff. A book like The Case of Ewan Forbes, who I rave about, a trans man who was born in 1912 to a Scottish aristocratic family, and his mother was very accepting of him presenting as male, and took him on the grand European tours, but instead of seeing the different sites of Europe, they went to the different sex clinics for treatment. So he was on testosterone very early on, and his life is amazing. And in England, up until the late 60s, you could get the birth certificate changed to affirm your gender identity. It was only when politics came into it in the early 70s, and that and I think also capitalism, in that if people don't have the traumas, then certain industries don't flourish. And so that was the reason that in England it was changed. The laws were changed, so then it had to be refought for, and things like that. You don't know each day, what's going to come in and what new ideas that you find out about yourself. So I studied librarianship. I worked at the Bureau of Meteorology Library because I also studied meteorology. And so I think a lot of that comes from a librarian's way of thinking, which is also a little bit of my downfall, because I collect the books that my philosophy of book buying is along the same lines as a librarian's, in that, you cover things, you don't think about what's bestsellers and stuff. And that's been a bit of downfall with some cash flow every now and then. When we were in Johnson Street and had the venue, I just used to love, again, one night we'd have, feminist film festival, and the next night, something else completely different, some sort of queer cabaret or something. And then we'd have in the day the gay book club, and then, Stitch and Bitch. It's never the same day twice.
Awesome. Hares and Hyenas obviously offers, has offered, quite a centre and I guess a meeting point for people over many years. Do you think that that's one of the important reasons for physical bookshops to exist?
Oh, without a doubt. Going back to your original question, that's one of the reasons for moving to the Pride Centre, would be to be part of a queer space. Johnson Street, we developed it as a queer space with the different events and having the cafe and stuff. And over the years, there's a story I hope I'm not repeating to too many of your listeners, but we... in Commercial Road, we'd get a lot of students from the private schools around the corner. We knew they were from the private schools because they wore the uniforms, who would read the street press. Basically, I assume because they couldn't take them home. So they'd come in each Friday and would read the street press. And then there was one who would come in every Friday, didn't talk to anyone else, didn't talk to us, would just sit in the corner, read the paper, pick up a couple of books and read them. And he did that for a number of years. And then he started talking and he became much more confident. I mean, I feel like I'm sort of a queer godparent to because you see people that have come in looking for books for themselves, and then they come in looking for books for their parents. This is back then. This doesn't happen. So now it's parents looking for books so that they can give their kids because they know their kids are going to be gay. It's sort of a bit more topsy-turvy these days. So there's that. When we had the police raid, the response from the community showed how significant the Johnson Street space was for the community, even though the raid itself wasn't centered around our queerness or anything, that it could have happened to anyone in any suburb, although it wouldn't happen to people in rich suburbs, but anyone in any suburb could have been accidentally thought to be harbouring a violent Middle Eastern criminal on their premises. Just so happened to be us who they raided. And but the response from the community was just flowers, food, just everything. So it just showed, we didn't have any doubt, but it just showed that how people viewed the space. It felt like it was personal for so many people that they rated the space. So it's so important, and I would say that would be for pretty much most bookshops, in that they do develop the community around them, and whether it's a local bookshop in a suburb, it will connect with the various groups of people. And bookshop staff, I have to say, are almost always wonderful people.
That's definitely been my experience. Roland, I've got two final questions for you.
Yes.
The first one is, what are you currently reading?
I always hate this one because it immediately just disappears from my, from my brain. I just finished The Brink by Holden, the Holden Fellow, which I thought was fantastic. Development on his first novel, which was a fantastic young adult novel. This one sort of broaches, whatever the word is, between young adult and adult, and his writing around character is so much stronger and a broader range of characters. So I'm now reading After Sappho. That gave me time to think of what I'm reading. After Sappho, which has been longlisted for the Booker Prize, which is little segments around Sapphic people, Sapphic women through history, and it sort of interconnects the history of ideas. I'm only 40 pages in, so I'm just assuming this is what happens. So yeah, it connects various poets and feminist thinkers from Sappho, and then for the next section, it jumps to 19th century Italy. So I'm still warming to it. So yeah, I think I'm going to really enjoy it.
Splendid. And the last thing is, what sorts of things would you like listeners to know about the shop or about upcoming events?
Okay, well, the event program is on hold until the fit out's done, because everything's a little bit too chaotic. So, and things like book clubs, I'm waiting. The cafe is going to happen in about 6 weeks at the Pride Centre, and so we'll be starting to develop the book clubs and events probably when spring hits. So I would say keep an eye out. You might have been thinking, what's happened to Hares and Hyenas? Now that they're in the Grand Palace, they're putting their feet up. No, they've been working behind the scenes, and we'll be having events starting in the next couple of months when our gorgeous fit out and the cafe opens. So that's one thing. I don't know what else. Just doesn't matter. Just come along. I'm a terrible self-promoter.
I'll have a link to the website on my website, yes. So everyone will be able to see your program when it's up. And
I tell you, this Christmas is fantastic books. Anyone who's into Heartstopper, the Heartstopper yearbook comes out in October. If you're into Trixie and Katia from RuPaul's Drag Race, they've got a new book in November. So if you're into science fiction, there's about 10 new science fiction titles coming out next month. So I don't know where we're going to put them. So come in and buy them. How's that?
Awesome. And I'll leave it there because it doesn't get any better than that.